Well, I suppose some of you thought that we were not going to make it this morning. And if you look at me, you can tell that I'm not dressed for the part. And that's not because I was lazy this morning. On the contrary, I have been up since 5 o'clock, getting myself angrier and angrier at what's going on in the world, and also the fact that if I want to tell anybody and express my opinion, I keep on being met by passwords and it words and upwards and all sorts of blocks on making sure that I don't get my message across while I have to take the message from all sorts of other people. All sorts of people who want to tell me what to do. I'll tell you who they are in a minute. But first of all, when I got up and when I saw what was happening, I decided I would record a little something for this broadcast. And of course, this piece of software gives you the ability to record pieces. Yeah, and then what happens is, of course, it makes it so complicated to do that I couldn't actually put it out that I wanted to. I got so far, and then I needed to be a nerd to take it further. So here it is. Oh, dear.
Slightly different break an egg this morning and quite short. The fact is that there is so much that is happening that even though I woke at 5 o'clock this morning and began my work looking around at what's happening, it was overwhelming. And the tentacles of everything that is going out from us to the world and the world back again is becoming so complicated, particularly with computers and cyber war, that conflict, whether it be at number 10 or whether it be on the Russian-Ukraine border, is getting beyond even the capacity to understand of the ordinary common man. So I'm going to take some time today to look through. But on top of that, I am getting sick and tired of banks and energy companies and so on harassing older people. They are mealy-mouthed. They keep on saying how much they support. No, they don't. The sector should be ashamed of itself, and it needs a shake-up. And after we've finished with ice cakes and all the other crap that's going on in Westminster, perhaps somebody will settle down to start to look after the homeless and the mentally ill. Because actually our society is creating mentally ill people. It's creating crime. Crime is... And nobody cares about it. They are so busy worrying about an ice cake. Well, worry about your ice cake, because I am ready to start to break the law. If everybody else is, why shouldn't I? An anarchist? Me? A true blue conservative? Law and order advocate? Threatening to break the law to try and get somebody to focus on the things that matter, whether it be a local MP, or whether it be the people in Westminster, or whether it be the people in the NHS, or whether it be people in the banks, and those dreadful people that now have taken over the financial services. And as for energy, well, they deserve to bake in their own heat and light and electricity. This is a world that is falling apart. And until somebody, somewhere, decides to do something about it, it will be voices like mine, a lone voice in the wilderness, trying to tell people to wake up and ask and force our authorities to sort it out. And I don't mean sticking my trousers by gum to a bridge or a road. I mean real activism, and that is to raise our voices and to shout loud. Well, that's my morning. That's what I want to see. Toodle pip.
So, loudmouth? Yes. Always have been a loudmouth. So why shouldn't I change? And I'll tell you something, is now let me tell you what the headlines are so you can see what I'm ranting and raving about. Here we are. The newspaper headlines, cost of living delayed by Downing Street turmoil. Yes, once again, let's see whether Boris had a glass of champagne when he shouldn't. Let's see whether he had icing on his bloody cake. Is what's happening to the country, what's happening to the world. We are threatened by an evil empire, if you like, and I love the Russians, and I love the people of Russia, but at the moment they're in the grip of absolute idiots, just the same as the rest of the world is. Every other country is in the grip of idiots, and they're all playing idiotic games, while the rest of us are left to rot. Well, that's not good enough. We want leadership, we want statesmanship, and we're not getting it from anywhere. So the Prime Minister's plan for cost of living crisis is delayed by Downing Street turmoil. Well, stop focusing, you silly buggers, on icing cakes and whether there was a party or whether there's not, right? Let's get down to the nitty-gritty, because there's a lot that can be solved locally if somebody would get the grip here. There's homelessness. The system is outrageous. It's not fit for purpose. It's run again by computers. It can't be run by human beings, not at the local council anyway, because they sacked everybody. There aren't enough people left to even open the doors, let alone put their minds to the things that should be put their minds to. The Guardian, Treasury alarmist refuses to confirm national insurance rise. Right. They all want more taxes. They want to tax us more and provide us with less. And that's the way that the world has been in the past. Well, that's not good enough. In the future, it has got to start thinking about people, about your constituents, about the people that you're supposed to serve. And what happened to that word serve? It's been lost in Parliament, and it's been lost in the civil service, and it's been lost in local councils. Nobody serves anymore. Everybody has got their own bloody agenda. The Daily Express, and that's a paper that normally supports the government. Boris allies, don't repeat Thatcher betrayal. Right, okay, what they're saying is, don't dump him. And actually, I tend to agree with that, not because I'm necessarily a supporter of Boris, but if you change your leadership when we're being threatened by Russian rockets, and when we're being threatened by rise in inflation, a sharp rise in inflation, when we're being threatened by the cost of living, when we're being threatened by the breakdown of the NHS, when we're being threatened all the way around by things in our lives, and particularly mental illness, which everybody is very happy to say is on the increase. And what's anybody doing about it? Sweet bugger all, that's what. And homelessness, right? You get a few deaths in one of the homeless places in East Sussex, and what people stamp their feet and say, oh yeah, I was worried about this, I've been watching this. Well, those people who have died don't care. And those people who are there probably care more. And those people in the homeless system, God help them, care even more. And what are you doing? Nothing, except poncing around and making statements about, oh, how concerned you are. Well, do something. Don't repeat Thatcher betrayal. All right, let's not change leadership while these things are going on. And let's forget about iced cake and champagne and oysters. I love champagne and oysters. I would have snuck them myself. That he who cast the first stone. Well, I do enough ranting and raving. I throw enough stones, and I'm not squeaky clean. I would have actually snuck out to a pub if it had been there. And how many people have I spoken to who would have done the same thing? Yes. Now, we've all got opinions, and that's fair enough. But if we're going to cast those opinions, let's do it on what's really important, and not bloody cakes, icing cakes at Downing Street. The Financial Times, and this is disturbing, new Russian gas projects face sanctions if the Ukraine is invaded. Now, in other words, the way that they're going to fight the war, the United States and the EU and ourselves, is to stop a pipeline that is about to begin pumping gas through the Ukraine to Germany. And then it would come to us. Well, use that as a sanction. Use that as a weapon. And yes, I would much prefer to see that rather than rockets being fired. But by the same token, who is going to be the end user? Or the end loser? It's going to be us. Right? Once again, there will be an excuse to raise the amount of money that is going out of our pockets just to survive, just to live. And is anybody paying any attention? No, no bloody way. They're not. The Times. The US sounds alarm over Russian cash in London. Well, here's another one. And it goes back to my use of computers. Computers are driving us instead of the other way around. The Russians have been pumping money like crazy. I personally know one oligarch who's put a lot of money in London, who owns real estate. He's not one of the biggest, but at least he is doing that. And who can blame him, because everybody else is. And what's more, our lax rules about money coming into London, because we're so eager to keep the city alive, is a lot of Russian money, which we know was ill-gotten, has been flooding in. And if your money is here, it gives you influence. And what the Americans are saying is, hey, do you realize that some of your financial institutions are dependent upon Russian money? And we're about to go to war with Russia? Ha 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 ha. Great. That's the soft underbelly, right? The Daily Telegraph. Work from home tax loophole to be closed. Well, some of you may say, well, so what? People shouldn't have been working from home anyway. But some people, entrepreneurs, whom the government actually encourages and then refuses to help in times of trouble, they have to work from home. They have no option. So, some civil servant somewhere has decided, oh, here we can get a few bob. Let's close this loophole. And actually, it doesn't matter who objects to it, they'll still do it. Until we get a strong enough voice on the ground, and we all start to stamp our little feet, and start to look at some of the injustices, and particularly, and you be careful about this, and you remember that I said to you, if you get biffed over the head in the street by a yob, don't go crying to the police if you didn't actually start crying now to say to the government, do something about it. Law and order is a precedent. The Met is in total disarray. We don't see a copper on the street. We don't even see a community services officer or whatever the hell they call them anymore. Right? We are in complete and utter disarray. So if you don't start shouting now, don't come sneaking around later. Don't start saying to us, well, yes, Keith, you and some of your people told us so. The Metro, Plan A, OK. God only knows what that's all about. Let's see. On the lifting of coronavirus restrictions in England on Thursday, Plan A-OK is the paper's shortest, snappy headline, reflecting that millions of people were impacted by plan-a-day work from home advice. Well, it does seem that people have been very anxious to get back to work, because the London Transport particularly are reporting that undergrounds, buses, trains are way up. And once you know it, the train companies are all doing emergency work and so on, trains cancelled all over the place, just as we all want to go back to work. Yeah, so the Metro is Plan A-OK. Bit terse. The Daily Mail. 600 Whitehall fat cats paid over £150,000. Yes, that's where this extra money is going that they're collecting. Paying fat cats. For what? For a civil service that is in disarray. Can't get its act together. And what happened to the lady who was investigating some parts of the civil service? Haven't heard from her lately. She'll be overwhelmed, I'm quite sure. Attacking a sacred cow is very, very difficult, if not impossible. And our system of governance has become a sacred cow, because those who are controlling it and those who are in it, they don't want to relinquish the reins. It's too good. They're stuffing their pockets full of money. They're living a life of luxury, a decent life, while the rest of us are having great difficulty. And you know, the Americans realized that before us. What they did is they put in a rogue. They put in Donald Trump. Well, he turned out to be just a bit too much of a rogue. So what was the backlash? In comes Joe Biden, part of the old school. And how's he behaving? Like part of the old school. So the protest has withered on the vine, or has it? Because perhaps there are tremors going through Washington, as much as there should be through Westminster, that Donald Trump is making a comeback. You may not like him, but by golly, the alternative has turned out to be exactly what it was before. Two political parties that are so far up their own backsides that actually they have forgotten totally why they're there. They don't represent the people at all. They represent a small group looking after themselves. And what's happened in Britain? Exactly the same thing. So, yes, let's worry about ice cake, but let's put it into perspective of what we need doing on the ground, how our social structure, our social fabric needs reforming. And it needs reforming starting now, not after some inquiry or other. It'll take years and years and years. We want action now. As I said in that little recorded piece. Well, what a naughty, naughty chap I am. Right? Law and order. Rule of law. I've pounded the Balkan countries. I've pounded parts of Africa. I've pounded parts of Southeast Asia. I've pounded Russia. I've pounded parts of the old CIS. The South Caucasus. The countries bordering the Soviet Union. Lithuania. Estonia. I've been to places that other people would never want to go. And for that matter, I spent a lot of time in Northern Ireland at the height of the Troubles. So I know what problems there are, and I know how people try to fix them. And it's about time that when we're fixing these things, that we try to do it without any sort of self-serving attitudes. And they are self-serving. Why? One person in one Balkan country told me the American government, if the Senate found out how we're actually supporting corrupt people here, they would do their nut. We'd be out on our ear. So what do? We continue to support the corrupt people so that they don't actually go crying to Washington and expose us. Ha ha! Yeah, great. Fat cats, 150,000. Let's get real. Let's set a cap on Whitehall salaries and MPs' salaries and MPs' expenses. Let them be subject to the same situations and scenarios and laws, for that matter, that the rest of us are. Why do they have to have something special? Because they're not special. In fact, on the contrary, most of them aren't. They're there because of an ism or a ratio. We need X number of women here, otherwise people are going to start crying. Let's stop the isms. Let's start looking for people who have talent, who people can do the job, instead of worrying about whether we're going to be criticized for having too many women or too many black people or too many Muslims or too many homosexuals or whatever. I don't care what anybody is. I want them to be able to do the job and give me the sort of life that I want, and they're not. And I've tried to follow every diktat that this government and earlier governments have. I've been an entrepreneur. I've tried it. It's bloody tough. And when you actually get to a crisis, does anybody help you? No, they don't. Right. The Star. Now, I'm not quite sure what it's on about, the Star. It's a Lost Ness monster, and it says it's been seen 600 miles away in Wimbledon. I have no idea what they're talking about. It might be worth buying the Star this morning because it's one of those headlines that is so intriguing. Whether they're really talking or is it tongue-in-cheek about the lock that must have been seen in Wimbledon. But there we are, at least a breath of fresh air. Because the other papers are full of, here we are, the Mirror, the Palace's sex trial fear. According to the Mirror, what's happening is that the Palace, the royal family, are worried that when Andrew gets up, he's going to talk about all the shenanigans that go on. Sounds as if the entire royal household is a bonking shop from the way that they put it. Well, I'm sure that that's not true. But by the same token, why are we so obsessed with that when we have poor, when we have needy, when we have hungry, when we have homeless, when we have mentally ill, when we have crime on the streets, when we have an NHS that has fallen apart? Why are we worried about whether the royals bonk or not? I personally am a royalist. But whether I am or not, I approve of our form of government. And that calls for the Queen to be the head of state, and that's the way I want it to stay. So let me be quite clear about that. And when I say quite clear, you can guarantee that some politician will start off, let us be clear, which means that they are now going to obfuscate and muddy the waters. Well, I'm fed up with all this. I get it on a day-to-day basis, and I am starting to become one of the mentally ill. Why? Because I keep on being inundated from the banks, from the credit card companies, from the energy companies, from the government, from here, there, and everywhere. And when I was subjected to homelessness, I realised just what a rotten bloody system it was. And when I've been trying to look after somebody who's mentally disturbed, I've began to understand what a rotten system it is. Most of these people are thrown to the wolves. They have no advocates. They have nobody to take their part. Their families in the main have abandoned them, and they are left to very suspect psychiatrists to make an assessment, which means either they get set free or they're bunged up for another 6 months or so. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. Nobody is looking at it. There's no advocacy anymore, and that's what our society was all about, debating, opinion. Well, you've got it from me. You've got it in spades. Well, only 1,000 or so people will see this. But that's okay too, because it's 1,000 more than probably would. I am pissed off. I am entirely pissed off. And I am pissed off with all those people in my own profession, in the media, who keep on getting obsessed with sex in the palace or icing on a cake in Westminster. Get with it. Urge the government to take on the things that matter, the things at the baseline. Yes, there are plenty of people earning 150,000 who don't give a sod whether a pound of potatoes is going to cost tuppence more at the supermarket. But there are thousands, even millions more, it's going to make a difference. And those are the people that we should be concerned about. Frankly, I always thought it was iniquitous to have a higher tax for a higher payer. I'm beginning to think that perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps that is a way of looking at it. There's nobody taking me on this morning. Nobody's saying, Keith, you're a prat. Well, I may be a prat, but at least I'm a prat who is not scared to raise his voice and to say publicly, it's all wrong. Get on with it. Let's see some real reform. I had the mayor of New Haven on a couple of weeks or so ago, and I asked her about reform. And she pointed out that she was a very, very minor politician, being the mayor of New Haven, quite right too, although there is a very ambitious scheme going on there to try and rejuvenate that town, and so there should be. So money should be poured in. I had my own idea, and it fell on deaf ears. They much more wanted an echo office rather than to rejuvenate and regenerate the city centre or the town centre the way that many, many towns have in other parts of Europe. And other parts of the Balkans, the Baltics, the CIS, and other places that under communism were let go. But no, we've got to be eco-friendly or some bloody thing. For God's sake, get real. Start to look at the things that matter. Start to look at the things that matter. And I am angry this morning. I am pissed off. I'm probably going to now go and shave and shower to see whether that will calm me down. But by the time that I'd actually gone through passwords and nonsense and MP4s and MP3s about video, I was angrier and angrier and angrier. What sort of world are we living in? It's not the world that I remember. Okay? Memory is false. There are lots of things that were wrong in 1945, in 1955, in 1965. Of course there were. But you know, it seems to me that you talk to your neighbour. It seems to me you saw a bank manager. It seems to me you saw a doctor. It seems to me that when you went to the shop, you could chat to the shopkeeper and you could chat to the other people in the shop. It didn't seem important at the time because it didn't look as if it was going to disappear. Well, it's all gone. I have to say that there is a lovely, lovely lady at my local Waitrose branch. And if she's there, because she's on shift, she's not always there, and I don't always go there. But last night, for instance, I said to her, she waved to me and greeted me just the way as if it was an old-time store. Because we've chatted about things, we've chatted about television, we've got to know one another just a little bit. And I said, when are you getting off? And she said, oh, very soon. I said, oh, well, that's good. Have it. And she said, in 1 minute's time. And I was very tempted to say, let me take you for a drink. Except I know that she's a married lady and I'm not going to compromise that. But that's the first element of good grocery, which the people sitting in John Lewis's boardroom have forgotten. I have no idea that's what they should be doing. What they're doing is they're doing self-service. Have a little card. Well, talk to the bloody card and see what it says back. You know, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Not supposed to say that anymore, of course, because somebody's going to get offended somewhere. One flew over the cuckoo's nest. I have come to the conclusion that all those people in governance, in positions of responsibility, executives in business and finance, they are all the cuckoos. And the rest of us sitting outside are the only people that can bring some sort of sanity to our society, to our community, to bring back communion with the people that we used to love. We don't know whether we love them anymore, we don't see them. We are perhaps deliberately kept isolated. It is not good enough. It is not good enough. Okay. Some of those people in governance would say, yeah, but it's really up to you as a community to do this, that and the other. Well, the community does do a lot. Particularly in our hometown of Lewis, the community does do a lot. But even so, I don't know of any society which is just encouraging neighbour to talk to neighbour. It's encouraging people to go and knock on the people next door. Where I live, I just on my floor and in a tiny little enclave, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 other apartments. I know the inhabitant of one. And that is my shame. And it just shows you how I've been battered by not only COVID and lockdown, but by a general disintegration of what I was raised to think that society was all about. Wow, I've enjoyed myself this morning, but I'm talking about real issues. Real issues. And it's time that people came to grips. Came to grips with what's really happening in our society. Phew. Okay. I love to calm down. There are some things. I always remember an old professor of mine saying, Keith, people who live in the countryside, farmers, are particularly conservative with a little c by nature, because they are so close to the land, they are so close to the earth. And there's a lot of truth in that. And that's where, quite often, you see the fruits of our labour. So let's look at them as we say goodbye to my ranting and raving and yelling and screaming. Now, I can't go back now because this went out live. And I don't want to go back. I want somebody to say, listen to the prat. Because that's what I want people to do. Listen. Toodles.